All right, how's it going? Tonight I want to talk about a couple things. Particularly a lot of fuss has been made about Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, right? Because they're laying off like 1,000 employees, um, and the direction of where Dungeons and Dragons going. What's WotC doing? And where is this all going? The first thing I wanted to kind of present to people, because most people don't look at this kind of stuff. Um, but if you have a look, the big news: Hasbro is laying off lots of people. Is Hasbro collapsing? Is it going away? No, right? What happened typically with Hasbro this year has been a rough year for them. They're not. It's not a good year for Hasbro, but they are far from sort of going under, right? You can look at their financials, and here's a look at their most recent quarterly report, right? Their third quarter earnings is what's leading to this, right? And really back to back second and third quarter. The main things you want to look at here are operating profit, loss, and then operating margins, right? You see here their big loss came from their entertainment division, right? Which is probably affected strongly by the acting and writing strike, the writer strikes, right? What you have essentially is that they had an operating loss of $800 million, right, for the year. This is for the year to date. This past quarter showing here, they still have an operating loss, but it looks like most of it came earlier in the year. This is down year over year, 22%. Their toys division for the third quarter, right, they still generated a lot of revenue and they were still profitable. But what you're seeing there is they're getting some pretty significant margin compression, right? They're typically, well, there's no typical margins for different products, but they're operating on the year on a 2.9% margin, right? So they have to spend, buttloads of money and only make about 3% margin. Now that's not that uncommon given the industry that they're in, right? Is fabrication of toys, right? Walmart has even thinner margins if you want to look, right? But they're operating on an economy of scale. They didn't sell as many toys as they wanted, right? And so you had massive spending here, right, to make not a lot of money. But if you look over here at Wizards of the Coast and digital gaming, this is their best maker, right? In terms of operating margins, you're looking at close to 40%. So they make a lot of money here, or rather, they don't make as much money as in terms of raw. Well, actually, this quarter they did, but um, it is becoming their biggest um, source of income, right? So Wizards of the Coast, for all the thing talk about D&D, they're destroying themselves. Yes, the D&D movie didn't do as well, probably because they did shoot themselves in the foot a bit there, but they're still very profitable. They make a lot of money off licensing these products, and Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast has very high profit margins. So you get a lot of revenue out of not much investment. And this is, it goes, if you look at their report, they more or less explicitly say, our goals are to enhance Hasbro's gaming leadership, both tabletop and digital, double down on fewer, bigger brands, drive new growth through direct consumer and licensing. They're doubling down on Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons, and they're going to make that a bigger part of their portfolio. And if you I read a little bit of it. I mean, Hasbro's not my specialty, but they're unwinding some of their other ownership positions. They do have debt levels, right? They do have, I think, about $1 billion in debt, if I remember. But they did make pretty sizable debt payments. They actually reduced their debt going into this year. So they're still an operating, functioning company, right? They're not going anywhere. And any kind of idea that Hasbro is going into the shitter just because its stock went down some, no, right? Hasbro's sticking around. They're going to double down on Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons, and they're really putting investments into this field, right? So what can you expect from WotC? Monetization, right? Dungeons and Dragons is going to be monetized. It is already the most profitable part of the company, and they're going to make it more profitable. And you can see if you play around on Dungeons and Dragons Beyond, I play in one 5th edition campaign, and I'm not a big fan of 5th edition, and I'm increasingly less a fan of WotC. But if you want an item that you can equip on your character, they're charging you like $2 just to be able to use the little freaking imaginary item to click onto your character, your digital character sheet, right? That's what you're going to see a lot of, right? Is that low level microtransaction monetization. They are going to invest more in games, right? They make, said that they made a lot of licensing money off of Dungeons and Dragons with Baldur's Gate and whatnot. So this is the area they're going into. So you're going to see a lot come out of Hasbro and WotC in the coming year. Whether they're successful or not does remain to be seen, but news of their demise are greatly exaggerated, right? They're still terrifically, even with all that happened, right, with the OGL scandal and people selling their accounts or whatever, still terrifically profitable. And you can see it on their earnings report. And they do have some adjusted, right, which is, probably non-GAAP adjusted, but still profitable in this field. So don't count your chickens yet. WotC's sticking around. You're going to get monetization. You're going to get the digital tabletop. So, people have been posting videos of them having already tried it out. It's where things are going. Now, the future of Dungeons and Dragons is going to be largely digital, right? And they've more or less expressly said that. I'm sure they will still make core rule books. Who knows if they'll do as many of the sort of supplementary books, but a lot of it's just going digital, right? And really going all in on some sort of closed realm, closed garden, if you will, of products where they can control the environment and control your access to the pieces, digital pieces, where you pay $2. If you want that sword of lightning in the little miniature, you're gonna have to pay $2 to get it, right? That sort of thing is what they're going to focus on. And I hate to break it to you, they're probably going to be very successful in that regard, right? Because this is a very high margin. Like you make, what is the cost of a little digital? Nothing, like a meg or two of memory, and they get $2, right? Which costs, they cost them like a quarter of a penny in electrical bills, processing power, and they make $2, right? So it's practically infinite margins, right? So they're going to make money. You may not like it. We may think it sucks. That we hate these grubby corporations. I certainly do. I'm not going to buy that shit, but they're going to be around. It is what it is, right? Now, as far as I wanted to mention something else, transitioning over, what is the future of the TTRPG hobby, right? Does this create openings for third-party products, Pathfinder, Daggers in the Dark, all these other games, right, that are out there. Fabula Ultima, which is one I've been really wanting to take a look at. Yes, right. I think the hobby has expanded to the point that there's room for third party. And every time, I've been playing since pretty much 1st edition. There's a sort of a wave every time an edition flips over. Whether or not it's a good edition, like people start exploring other things because you might as well, you're buying a new edition, right? This happened very strongly in 4th edition when 4th edition came out because nobody liked 4th edition, right? But 5th edition has been extremely popular. So this reminds me of the time right before 4th edition, right? Is that you're replacing, 3rd edition was terrifically popular. Still my favorite. But you're moving into a new edition from an edition that was already popular, right? So there is some risk there of losing market share. But their loss is someone else's gain. And hopefully there's a lot of cool games out there that we can all try, and I recommend everybody try them. Certainly there's, Dungeons and Dragons is not the end all be all of TTRPGs, right? There's a lot of great stuff out there. So hopefully what you see is an explosion of third-party content. And this, this is the other thing. What's going to fuel this is, of course, AI, right? Using AI now to generate content lowers the cost of entry dramatically, right? Um, you can, even if you don't want to, I don't think well, I'm sure some people are, but using AI strictly to generate all the stuff, right? It's going to come out kind of wonky, right? Because AI is not quite there yet. You still really need to prompt and need to have ideas, and using it to clean up language is probably what most people are doing, and maybe generate some ideas. But the art thing, and I know people are very mad about, are we replacing artists and all that kind of stuff? Well, yes, right. Yes, you are, right? AI generated art is going to replace a lot of artists. But as far as content creators, you know, having tried to hire or have hired artists to do stuff before, and graphic designers, it is a giant pain in the ass. And what this does is this allows people to not have to pay artists and go find a whole other person to design your stuff, right? Before you can get it to the market, right? So it lowers the cost of entry, which means there's going to be a giant wave of really shitty TTRPG games coming out. But within that whole mess and tidal wave of nonsense are going to be some really good games, right? And people can now create who were otherwise limited, right? Organizing artists and getting this graphic design and all that together is difficult. Like I've been creating little supplements using Designer now, which I just got, and it's not as good as my graphic designer, but it's free, or it's $20, right? So look for a lot more of that. Like AI changes this, and not only does it allow for more creative people to sort of enter the development, creative game creation arena. A lot of the AI tools coming out are going to reshape how people play TTRPGs, right? Especially in a digital environment. There is a storm of cool things coming out, and you're getting very high quality text to video, high quality voice emulation. Right? 11 labs now, you can train the AI voiceover thing. So like you give it enough voice samples and it'll listen to it and then reproduce it. So you can theoretically do your D&D game, and whenever somebody asks you something, type in and have it trained to James Earl Jones' voice, and James Earl Jones answers the question, right? You can make videos that use your characters, right, that you've created, that'll digitize them and animate them, getting really good really fast. So you can now sort of transform the way games, TTRPGs work, right? From an experience of us sitting down and playing dice to something that uses either all online or some mix of technology, right? Where you can have more immersive environments. You can have all your NPCs actually have specific voices that you've saved in your voiceover AI, right? And you can chat their responses back at the players, which is pretty cool. You can make a movie out of every session, right? Using the text to video functions, the art functions from DALL-E 3 and Midjourney and all that kind of stuff to generate characters, generate monsters, generate whatever you want, right? All adding to this game experience. And I think when we come to the question of is the TTRPG hobby here to stay? Is it going to stay as popular as it is now? I think it is. I think it is. I think it's actually going to get more popular because it is developing into a much more immersive, almost creative art form where game masters can now really create a whole experience around a campaign. This goes beyond just people playing, a normal game in a tabletop setting. Right? Like you can have immersive cinema features built in, and you're going to see some of these DMs start doing that. Right? I mean, I plan on doing that with my campaigns because why would you not? That's super fun. So I think we can look forward to some really creative stuff coming out of the TTRPG gaming environment. It's just an evolving situation, right? And it's an evolving form of entertainment because TTRPGs can be these year-long stories that sort of write themselves as they go. And it's a form of entertainment. You can probably start packaging these campaigns for very good ends and selling those individually, edited, and then do, kind of like What's Critical Role's cartoon that they have, the Legend of Vox Machina, which is highly entertaining, right? And campaigns that I've done, if we mapped them out, sort of were highly entertaining. You can transfer them. Normal GMs can transfer that and create a whole show based on their campaign, right? And I guarantee you, some of them are going to be fantastically entertaining, right? So a lot coming down the pipe, a lot of possibilities are opening up, and I'm kind of just excited to see that. Just generally excited for what's going on, what's happening. I think that all in all, I think this hobby is here to stay, right? And whether or not WotC spear is the tip of the spear of that remains to be seen. They're still going to be around. They'll always be a major player unless somehow somebody else buys it. So if Elon Musk buys out Hasbro, whatever. They're going to be around. So look for interesting things coming out of them. Look for really interesting expansion content, right? From all spheres, and really good game systems coming out there, all worth checking out. A lot of good content. I think the future generally looks pretty bright, all things considered. Right? So those are just my thoughts on it. I'll drink some Johnny Walker here. Sign off. But I will see you next week or whenever. I don't know. It's hard to make fucking videos when you got kids, man.